Welcome to the Jean Hales Foundation's program on menopause. My name is Janet Michelmore. The foundation was set up in memory of my mother, Jean Hales. She was a GP who established Australia's first menopause clinic. Her view was that this is an important time in a woman's life and that they needed to look after themselves. As a 53-year-old, I couldn't agree more. And this is what this program is all about. Finding out the facts, exploring the options, working out what's right for you, and taking home some practical tips. The Jean Hales Foundation for Women's Health was established to do just that. It is now a national organisation dedicated to improving the health and well-being of Australian women. It does that through research, education, and a medical centre in Clayton, Victoria. We are thrilled that so many women from rural Australia have registered for this program. Notes of the webcast are available at www.jeanhales.org.au. And tonight we will be having breaks throughout the presentation so you can send in your questions. We have a wonderful panel of experts for tonight's presentation. Dr. Elizabeth Farrell is a gynaecologist and one of the driving forces in the establishment of the Jean Hales Foundation for Women's Health. Liz consults at the foundation as well as in private practice and is head of Monash Medical Centre's Menopause Unit in Melbourne. She is recognised worldwide for her expertise in this field and is the current president of the Asia Pacific Menopause Federation and president-elect of the Australasian Menopause Society. Liz is passionate about helping women manage menopause in the context of living a happy, healthy, active and full lifestyle. Dr. Mandy Dix is a psychologist who specialises in the area of menopause and midlife, early menopause, libido, depression and anxiety. She is passionate about educating and supporting women to help them make changes in their life if they need to. A highly sought after national commentator, we're very proud of Mandy's recently published book, Life Begins at Menopause, a warts and all look at menopause, which is the result of a wealth of knowledge gained firsthand from the hundreds of clients who have shared their life's journey with Mandy. Sandra Villela is a naturopath, herbalist and acupuncturist. She uses herbal medicine incorporating Chinese medicine, as well as nutritional supplements and dietary advice in her practice. Sandra's interest is women's health, particularly in the management of menopause. And she is keen to bridge the gap between natural therapies and conventional medicine to achieve true complementary health, a great bonus for women. So let's start off with what is menopause.
Menopause is a natural life event in a woman's life. It happens to us all and it begins at the time of the last menstrual period. In most women it will happen between the ages of 40 and 57 and on an average about 50 to 51. The perimenopause, which is the transitional time before the periods actually stop, on an average takes place over 5 or 6 years. And it starts with the beginning of the reproductive years and then it moves through until the last period, and that is 12 months after the last menstrual period. These changes often start in the 40s. For many women, the hormonal changes will be reflected, particularly in their periods. So the periods may become irregular, they may become less often or infrequent, and they may become less and less until they finally finish. Sometimes that will also be in terms of flow, and so they won't have as much bleeding, it'll get lighter and lighter. But occasionally some women will have periods which are heavier and all over the place, and those women need to go and see their doctor about that. Menopausal-like symptoms may also begin in this time, such as hot flushes.
What might a woman experience at menopause?
Well, not all women suffer symptoms and the signs of menopause. So about 20% of women have no symptoms. About 20% of women will have severe symptoms, unfortunately, and the majority of women will have mild to moderate symptoms. These symptoms can last from just a few months up to many years. The majority of women will have symptoms between 2 to 5 years. About 25% of women will have symptoms that go on for more than 5 years, and 1 in 10 women will have long-term symptoms. What are the symptoms? Well, hot flushes, night sweats, having awful flushing and having really intense symptoms can occur at the worst. Some women will just have a little bit of heat like we're all experiencing now. You can get disturbed sleep because you're waking up hot at night. And also you can have joint and muscle pains, headaches, migraines, an awful sensation of feeling like ants under your skin, which is most unpleasant. Feeling more tired than usual, being anxious or irritable, finding that your memory's not quite as good, being forgetful, having trouble concentrating, finding that your moods are all over the place. When you used to cope with things before, you can't cope with them again. And then there are problems with one's vagina. The lubrication diminishes, so intercourse may be quite uncomfortable and painful. Many women talk about it being like sandpaper. One's libido diminishes, and sometimes women experience an increased frequency of wanting to pass urine more often, and also an urgency of needing to go and not being able to hold on.
Mandy, what can women expect emotionally at the time of menopause?
Well, menopause is actually a very individual experience, and no two women will experience menopause in the same way. So while some women may experience some symptoms, other women may escape symptoms. And I think a really nice thing that a lot of women say to me is that they've maybe hit 50, they have 30, 35 years left of their life to live if we look at the average age of Western women. And they say, you know, this is a time for me. This is actually a positive time. And I guess in some ways that's why we called the whole presentation Life Begins at Menopause, because it can be seen as a beginning for a lot of women. It's also a time where there are a lot of other stresses going on. Maybe children are teenagers, leaving home, parents might be requiring more help. So there are a lot of life issues that happen at menopause as well, but it really is a very individual time.
So Liz, how can women make the most of their lives at this time?
Well, the most important thing is to be educated, to have knowledge, and that helps to empower women. We need to look at our lifestyles, and we may need, if we have severe symptoms or moderate to severe symptoms, require some sort of treatment. We may require pharmaceutical treatment, or we may require herbal or complementary therapies, or we may require some counselling or psychological therapies. It's important to perhaps document your symptoms in a diary, particularly in the perimenopause when symptoms can be all over the place. And if you're worried, to seek help from someone who has knowledge, such as your GP or your women's health nurse or your community health centre or women's health centre. Also from specialised clinics such as our Jean Hales Menopause Clinic and Midlife Clinic. Also menopause clinics at some of the major teaching hospitals, and a women's health naturopath or herbalist who is specially trained in the area of women's health. Always beware of people who may be purporting to have information about the menopause, but you need to source out what their knowledge and training is. If we look at lifestyle modification, if you think of the commonest symptom of the menopause, the hot flushes, then we need to think about how we can improve and reduce those symptoms. So diet is very important, and we'll talk a bit about diet and exercise as we go through our presentation. Reducing our weight, because most of us tend to put on weight when we get to the menopause. And this is because of a change in our metabolism, and we tend to eat the same, but we put on weight. We also need to perhaps dress in layers, be able to take them off when the hot flushes come. We need to think about lifestyle modification in terms of the flushing. So have some hand fans in all your handbags. Have a little fan beside your bed. if you're able to have air conditioning, have air conditioning. And one of the other things you can do is just to carry a little facial water spray that when you have the big hot flush and you start to go red in the face, you pick it up and spray your face. And also having cool drinks. It's important to avoid smoking and to consider relaxation or meditation or yoga to be able to calm oneself down.
Sandra, Liz mentioned diet. Can you tell us more about healthy eating?
Yes. We're always told about healthy eating, but nobody goes through the specifics so much about what we should be eating. So the first thing to keep in mind is regular meals. So for some women that might be 3 meals a day. For other women they may prefer 5 smaller meals with the food spread out along those meals. And in those meals we want to incorporate some protein and complex carbohydrates. Now that doesn't mean you sit down and have a steak at every meal, but in protein might mean that you have some animal source such as fish or eggs or dairy, including yogurt, or it might mean that you have some chicken or fish. And if you're not, you need to incorporate other foods together, so complement certain vegetarian foods together, such as a grain and a legume. So for example, that could be baked beans on toast, or nuts and a grain, so it might be cashews and rice, or pasta and pesto, or if not, legumes and a seed, so hummus for example. So at every meal trying to incorporate that in. Now some women find that they cut out meat, they don't feel like eating as much meat, and what you'll find is not having protein at every meal, the energy levels tend to drop and you're more likely to want to feel like a sweet biscuit and a cup of tea at mid-morning and mid-afternoon. It's also important to have high fibre, so where you can, using whole grains, some seeds can be useful, and particularly trying to have 2 pieces of fruit and 5 vegetables a day, not the other way around. Grains and cereals help us to feel full and give us some fibre as well. So low saturated fats, so the saturated fats found in animal products, and particularly found in things like the skin of chicken and meat fats, so we need to trim those, and also the hidden fats. Often look at the dry biscuit packet and see what sort of fat is in that. Sugar and salt, so always read labels, look for all of the words with O's at the end, like glucose, sucrose, they're all these sugars. Compare nutritional labels, that's important, and try and limit soft drinks and juices. They're often very empty calories and gets rid of a lot of the things that we really should get from the fruit, and once they're put into the fruit juices, they're not as good. Calcium's important, and we need to be aiming for about 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams a day, and that can be found in low-fat dairy products, but also canned fish with the bones. You have to eat the bones, not throw them out, so mash up the salmon bones, eat sardines. Sardines are a very good source of calcium, and I'm a big fan of sardines, as you all know. Plenty of water, so at least 1.5 litres to 2 litres of water a day. Reduce or eliminate caffeine, so that means usually about 1 coffee a day, so choose the coffee you like the best, or 3 teas, and moderate alcohol. 2 standard drinks was what we used to say, and more recently it's 1 standard drink. Now a standard drink is 100 mils, so if you're having a glass of wine that's big, or sharing a half a bottle of wine at night, it could be that you're actually having 3 to 4 standard drinks a day, so really watch that.
Can you give us some information about phytoestrogens?
Yes. Phytoestrogens are plant estrogens, and in plants there are estrogenic-like compounds that we find in plants, and they have different effects to our own body's estrogen, and they're much weaker than our own estrogen, and they have different functions. So they may be beneficial in some women in reducing some perimenopausal symptoms associated with low estrogen, such as hot flushes and particularly vaginal dryness. It's thought that about 1/3 of women will benefit from having these in their diet in terms of symptom relief. So how do we try and get phytoestrogens in our diet? In our culture, it's not a common food, but there are ways of incorporating them in. One of the best sources is tofu, and most people screw up their noses at tofu and they don't know how to cook it, but basically it's quite bland and you can cook it however you want to cook it. It will take on the taste you give it. So my background's Italian, so I do what I call tofu Italian style, where I bake vegetables, cut up the tofu, toss them through with vegetables, olive oil and garlic and rosemary, and bake them in the oven. So you've got these crispy bits of tofu that go with that. Or you can disguise it in soup, so if you're making pumpkin soup, for example, cut up the tofu, put it in, blend it through, and And if you have suspicious family members asking what the white bits are floating on the top, when you're frying up the onions at the beginning, put in a little bit of turmeric powder and the bright orange colour comes back. You can have it on kebabs this time of the year, on the barbecue, or order it at Asian restaurants. So it's sold as bean curd, and Asian restaurants like Malaysian or Japanese, they tend to make it quite nicely. You can use linseeds. Now, the best way to use linseeds is having them ground. So 2 dessert spoons of linseeds. And what you want to do with the linseeds is not buy them already pre-ground, because linseeds are also a source of essential fatty acids. So they're fats we cannot make in our body. And as soon as you grind seeds, the oils in them start to oxidise or go off. So even if you're buying them from the health food store in the fridge, unless they've been ground that day and you use them within 2 weeks, the oils will be useless. So the best thing to grind them with is a coffee grinder, an electric coffee grinder, and they go through quite quickly. Sometimes the sort of bar mix attachments with the nuts, they tend to not be so good in a food processor. If you can't grind them, the question that's often asked, well, are you absorbing them if they come out looking like how they went in? And you don't absorb them quite as well, but something that I've suggested recently is you soak them overnight with some other nuts in yogurt and then put that on your cereal, and it gives that nice sort of crunchy, soft taste to them. Use soybeans. Soybeans are a lovely legume to have. They're quite a nutty taste, and they can be put into casseroles and salads or soups, and they tend to be a little bit less wind producing than some of the other legumes, so they're a good one to incorporate in. You can get soy grits, literally bits of soy that can be put on top of the breakfast cereal, and again, if you find them a little bit too crunchy, soak them overnight with yogurt or water. Using sprouts. Sprouts are an excellent way of not only increasing the amount of phytoestrogens, but it increases the amount of minerals like calcium and magnesium and zinc. And putting sprouts into salads, having them into sandwiches are great. Use soy flour. So if you bake, you can use half soy flour, half wheat flour, and it doesn't change the consistency of the recipe. A lot of women use soy milk thinking that that's a way of getting in phytoestrogens, and it may be a source of phytoestrogens if the soy milk actually contains whole soybeans. So you need to read the label and have soybeans, whole soybeans, as one of the first ingredients, not some isolated soy protein as ingredient number 29. You're not going to get that as a source of phytoestrogens. And just generally legumes, so if you like baked beans, chickpeas, if you like kidney beans, having those. A lot of the products we can now get on the market are soy enriched, and read the labels. Does it have soy flour in it? Does it have linseeds? Look for the real sources rather than some funny name that looks like it's some derivative of soy. Look for the soy flour and the soy.
Sandra, how much of these types of foods would women need to eat?
Okay. So to try and get the same amount of phytoestrogen someone like an Eastern Japanese woman might get to get symptom relief, you do need to incorporate quite a bit. So it's about 220 grams of tofu. So that's about half of one of the big blocks cut into a couple of steaks and having that as a meal. About 3 cups of soy milk, which is actually quite a lot, and you'd need to watch that it wasn't a high-fat soy milk. About 56 grams of soy flour, which may be achievable by a few pieces of soy and linseed bread, for example, if that has the soy flour in it. About 2 cups of cooked soybeans. And while I don't usually suggest people take soybean supplements because it's not the same as having soy in the diet, soy germ is a source that is very similar to the way soy is actually found in its natural source, and you can get the therapeutic dose by having a teaspoon of soy germ, and that might be prescribed by a naturopath.
Liz, you mentioned exercise. What advice have you got regarding physical activity for women?
A very important question. The Australian Physical Activity Guidelines suggest that we should put together 30 minutes of moderate exercise most days of the week for health benefits. We should be active every day as much as is possible. So all the mundane things that we do, things like gardening, if you enjoy gardening, walking, even shopping, or if you catch public transport, get off the tram or the train a few stops, or the bus a few stops before your stop, and walk, those sorts of things, and make exercise enjoyable. Also try to get in some vigorous exercise, which will improve health and fitness, and think of movement as an opportunity, not an inconvenience. We know that physical activity produces endorphins, which are brain chemicals, and these brain chemicals improve mood and allow one to cope better. Maintain a healthy weight, so physical activity has that very important role, and it can reduce hot flushes, we think. We know that if you exercise, you may improve your sleep patterns. Obviously, you'll improve your flexibility, you'll have better strength and balance and healthy bones and joints, and it definitely, exercise will improve heart health and diabetes.
We're going to take a small break. In the first part of this program, we've covered menopause, signs and symptoms. It's an individual experience. We've also looked at lifestyle options, healthy eating, phytoestrogens, and the benefits of physical activity. Now we want you to send in your questions so our experts can answer them. Welcome back to our program. Prior to the break, we discussed lifestyle changes as the first recommendation for women to manage menopause symptoms. But as we know, there are some that have more moderate symptoms. Liz, if lifestyle options are not working, what else can a woman try?
Well, she may need to have pharmaceutical therapies, so some prescriptive therapies, in other words. In the perimenopause, that transitional time, often the low-dose combined oral contraceptive pills used. And that often can help in those women who've got irregular periods or the periods are heavier, and it can also help in relieving the symptoms. Obviously, when women pass through the menopause and have had their last period and they've got hot flushes, hormone therapy can help the flushing and other symptoms. And in women who are unable to use hormonal therapies, there are a group of antidepressants called the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And these particular medications have been shown to reduce hot flushes and not only the quality of the flush, but the intensity of them as well. And obviously, the antidepressants can improve mood, reduce anxiety and depression, and help you sleep. Taking or replacing natural hormones that the body no longer makes is what we call hormone therapy. So estrogen, and we produce a number of estrogens in our body, they are the hormones that alleviate the hot flushes in particular. They also help to protect bone, they help to improve vaginal secretions and make intercourse less uncomfortable, and they may also reduce the risk of bowel cancers. We know that progesterone is important, and progesterone is prescribed in women who still have their uterus, those women who've not had a hysterectomy, and progesterone is important to protect the uterus.
Liz, there's been a lot of confusion about hormone therapy. Can you update us about the benefits and risks?
We know that there are risks of taking hormone therapy. We know that in 2002, the WHI study was published, and there was a very negative response to the publication because it showed that there was an increase in the risk of heart disease, heart attack, stroke, thrombosis and breast cancer. In 2006, the data from the WHI has also been republished, and it's been shown that in those women who go on to hormone therapy for their menopausal symptoms, that is those women in their late 40s and early 50s, show no increase in the risk of cardiovascular disease. And in fact, there may be a trend towards protection. And it is in the older woman that the risks are greater. In women who are on hormone therapy for more than 5 years, there is a small increase in the risk of breast cancer. There is definitely an increase in the risk of thrombosis and a small increase in the risk of stroke. We know that there are other side effects of women being on hormone therapy, such as breast tenderness and sometimes spotting, particularly in the first 6 months of being on therapy, and there are different styles of therapy in which there may be greater risks of spotting. In women who've had a hysterectomy, women are prescribed estrogen alone. And it's interesting to know that from the WHI study, that same big study that was published in 2002, the study with estrogen alone was published in 2004, and that showed no increase in the risk of breast cancer up to 7 years and no increase in the risk of heart disease. There was definitely still a small increase in the risk of stroke and thrombosis. There are other forms of hormone therapy such as tibolone or Liviol, and this is a synthetic therapy that has the actions of estrogen, progesterone and testosterone. It is a therapy that will reduce the risk of fractures. It will also improve menopausal symptoms, reduce the hot flushes and will improve vaginal secretions. Testosterone, which is the third female hormone and the first male hormone, is also sometimes used in women, particularly those women who have had a hysterectomy and their ovaries removed before the age of natural menopause. And studies have shown that it may improve libido and also energy and well-being. However, there are no long-term studies in the use of testosterone at this point in time. The forms of testosterone that are used are mainly implants and testosterone cream. Now, a lot of you will have heard about bioidentical or natural hormone replacement therapy. These therapies cannot be recommended and they are not approved of by the TGA, and recently the FDA, which is the regulatory body in the USA, has come out with a very strong statement against the use of bioidenticals. These are preparations that are made by a compounding chemist, a specialist chemist, who makes up creams or lozenges to the prescription that some particular doctors will prescribe. Many women are told by these practitioners that these particular therapies have less risk or side effects to conventional prescriptive hormone therapy. There is no literature, there is no research to back up those statements at all. While yam creams have also in the past been recommended, and they've been recommended as being a natural progesterone, but in fact, as Sandra will tell you later, wild yam in fact has an estrogenic product in it. It's more estrogen and not at all progesterone. And progesterone cream has in the past been available across the counter, but it is in fact one of the bioidentical hormones, and there is little evidence to show that it is of benefit in the management of hot flushes.
Sandra, tell us about natural therapy options.
Some women will benefit from using natural therapies for the management of their symptoms, particularly if they're mild to moderate symptoms. And it's depending on what a woman is trying to achieve. So mostly a woman will go and seek the help of a naturopath for hot flushes. What a naturopath does differently to getting a product over the counter is they'll tailor a formula very specific to that woman's needs. So she may be having hot flushes with some sleep disturbance, and it will cover her symptoms more specifically, and also give advice at how long to take the treatment, because there's always temptation to keep taking something that you can buy over the counter, and it may be appropriate only take it for a short period of time. And unfortunately, a lot of the remedies that are available over the counter, self-promoted or promoted by other personalities, are either ineffective or not what a naturopath would use. And I'll give you some examples. The first one is evening primrose oil. Now, evening primrose oil is a great supplement if you have dry skin, if you're having some PMS symptoms or breast tenderness, but it's been shown to be no better than taking a dummy pill for the treatment of hot flushes. Yet there's this belief that it helps, and it's often promoted and prescribed by other health practitioners to use. Red clover preparations are another example. Red clover does contain phytoestrogens or plant estrogens, and this was shown by when sheep who graze on clover in Australia would become infertile because the red clover would interfere with their reproductive cycle. And while red clover does have a real phytoestrogenic effect, it's never been traditionally used for the treatment of hot flushes. So it's something that's been used in the last 5 or 10 years. And it is promoted as being useful, and it may have some effects on cardiovascular system as well. And the last example is soy-based supplements. We talked about the phytoestrogens before. They have benefit as food, but all of the benefits are found in the food. We can't have the same, we don't know that by taking X, Y and Z out of the soy, making it into a tablet, getting rid of A, B, C because we don't know what that does, that you're going to have the same benefit from the soy. And in nature it's more likely that A, B, C works with X, Y, Z to make it better. And particularly with the soy supplements, it is strongly recommended that women who have a history of breast cancer don't use the soy supplements, because while soy in the food is fine, soy supplements, there's not enough information to know that it's safe. For hot flushes, a naturopath will treat the hot flushes depending on what the trigger is. So the woman will be differentiated into whether their hot flushes are brought on by anxiety and stress, or aggravated by fatigue and overwork, if they're predominantly worse at night and associated with night sweats, or just with sweating. And some women may have a few of those altogether. And when a naturopath is formulating a formula, they will do, in that prescription, often have some estrogen-like, not estrogenic, estrogen-like, so they might have some action similar to some of the estrogen, such as black cohosh or hops, which we also know is found in beer, but hops is a slightly more therapeutic in this way. Licorice, again, it's licorice root and not licorice confectionery, and wild yam.
Many women suffer from insomnia and other sleep problems. Can you tell us more about this?
Well, in the perimenopause or the transition, sleep disturbances can be there because of the hot flushes and the sweats. But sometimes in this particular phase of women's life, it's because they're just more wakeful. They just don't have as deep a sleep, and I don't think we really understand about that very well. Some women also suffer from sleep apnea and restless leg syndrome, where their legs move around a lot at night, so it wakes them up and disturbs their sleep. Or they may be stressed. It's a time in which women are often stressed, and they're also aware of the changes in their body, but it may be because they're stressed, they're depressed, or they're anxious, and they're worrying about things, so they're much more wakeful. But Sandra's going to talk to us now more about sleeplessness and insomnia.
There are some things that you can do to try and help with sleep, and I often do see people who have done all the right things and they're still having sleep disturbances. And as Liz said, we don't really know a lot about why women don't sleep very well during this perimenopausal phase. It tends to be more of the waking through the night. But limiting caffeine, so even if you've had 4 cups of coffee all your life and it's never affected your sleep, it's important to try and reduce it to no more than 2 cups of coffee a day, strong coffee or strong tea, cola, and if you're having dark chocolate late at night and you're sitting down and having 70% dark chocolate, you need to watch how much you're having, keeping in mind that does have caffeine. Not smoking 1 or 2 hours before bed. Be aware that some of the things that we might think help us to get to sleep, like alcohol, may actually adversely affect our sleep and tend to cause more wakefulness through the night. Some experts talk about not napping during the day. Others say it's okay to have a small nap between 15 and 20 minutes that won't affect the sleep poorly, or if you do, and as long as it's not greater than 20 minutes and not later than 6 p.m. at night. It's also important to have some regularity about going to bed, similar times to bed and similar times getting up. So between 7 and 7:30, going outside into the sunshine often is quite useful. And avoid going to bed too early, not before 10 p.m. if you're having sleep disturbances. Don't go to bed too hungry or with a full bladder. Sometimes you wake up because in fact your blood sugar is a little bit low. Don't keep working or studying right up until you go to bed. Stop 30 minutes before, and regular exercise is also important. So regular exercise, preferably early in the day. Avoid vigorous exercise late in the evening, with the exception of sex. And it's also been shown that Tai Chi could be beneficial because it is quite a lot of Tai Chi on a regular basis to help with that. I don't often recommend self-prescribing with herbs, but in terms of sleep, most of the herbs that you'll get over the counter for sleep are quite safe to take, and they might just help with getting off to sleep. So valerian or passion flower, hops and chamomile, look for preparations like that. Go to a good tea shop and get a nice sleep blend. Naturopaths will often use a herb called withania, which is quite good for waking through the night. So it's not a sleep herb, but it tends to be quite a good tonic. And when you're taking your calcium, particularly most perimenopausal and postmenopausal particularly should be taking calcium, most postmenopausal women, we would suggest taking it at night. So calcium with some magnesium at night, it tends to relax the muscles. One of the thoughts is that it's very fine muscle tremors that might be waking women through the night.
Can herbs be useful in managing other menopausal symptoms?
Yes, so for example, for vaginal dryness, we would often use black cohosh. Women would be taking this orally, and we also make up a lovely cream with other healing oils, or a pessary, which is like a vaginal suppository with black cohosh in it. Linseeds is also a useful home remedy that women can do for helping with vaginal dryness. There was a research paper that showed by having 2 heaped dessert spoons of linseeds a day, or 25 grams of ground linseeds, it improved the vaginal dryness. So the vaginal cells tend to get dehydrated, and it showed that it tends to plump up the vaginal cells. It is important that you eat the linseeds and not apply them to get the therapeutic effect. We can also use herbs for libido. Now, a lot of women, and men indeed, look for a quick fix for libido. And I have to say that the way that the herbs are used for libido isn't that they stimulate some sexual urge. It's not that you can take horny goatsweed, for example, and then be chasing your partner around the house. The way that the herbs generally work are as tonics, and they have to be in the whole context of how the relationship is, how a woman is feeling. So when we talk about libido, it's really about improving general health. So if you've got good physical health, emotional health, and mental health, that will have some impact. it's important to follow the 3 R's, what I call the 3 R's: rest, relaxation and recreation. Taking time out, having some time to rest, sitting in the garden if you've got a garden, and reading. And exercise is also important. Exercise tends to not only improve our physical fitness, but when we start to exercise, we feel better about ourselves. Our self-esteem improves, and self-esteem can often be a factor involved with our libido, and Mandy will talk a bit more about that.
Libido is actually quite complex. There are a lot of different influences on libido. It depends very much on who you are. So when we're talking about desire, it's your experiences that you've had in the past, it's your personality, the kind of relationships that you've had, and that kind of history. Also, lifestyle's really an influence on libido, so your substance use, whether alcohol or medication, stress, and stress certainly is present in a lot of our lives, and that influences libido. Physical activity, we know that women who are more physically active tend to have higher levels of libido or feel more sexual. Physical health is very important. There's a hormonal component as well. And even medications. Medications can interfere with libido, like some of the antidepressant medications. Self-esteem is really important. So I guess, as you can see, we're starting to get a picture of how many things influence libido. Body image, and the most important thing is your relationship. So it's pretty hard to have sex with somebody if you are feeling angry or frustrated, or you've just had a fight with someone. And we know that that is actually the most important influence on libido. And the other one is the situation that you might be in. So do you have children living at home, or do you have young children or relatives staying? So situation is very important. I think one of the things that I really want to get across is that your level of libido, if you're happy with it, is your level of libido. If you have a low level, or what you consider to be a low level, in actual fact you could be quite normal. If you're happy with it, there's no reason to do anything about it. When we start having problems with libido is when we have one partner who might have a higher level and one partner with a lower level. Just because somebody has a higher level doesn't mean they are better than someone with a lower level. It's about talking with your partner. It's about working out what's really important for you. And I often ask women to ask themselves and ask their partners, what level would you be happy with? What motivates you to have sex? There are lots of reasons to have sex. It can be because of pleasure, for reward. We can go down that path of guilt. Some people will have sex for guilt. And one woman actually said to me, I have sex for the housekeeping money. And she was deadly serious, and she was quite relaxed about it. She decided that that was important to her. So as you can see, there are lots of reasons for having sex. The thing that we need to remember is that for sex to occur, there has to be a willingness. You cannot have a sexual encounter if you're not willing. So rather than looking at desire or libido as the magic thing, we really need to look at willingness. And we also need to make sure that sex is pleasurable rather than painful. If sex is ever painful, then certainly please seek some help. So we know that the reasons are because you feel the lust or the desire. We know that we'll have sex to have babies because it's a nice thing to do, because it's a recreational thing to do. Some people talk about having sex to fill up their skin hunger. So they like the intimacy that the touch brings, whereas other women will say that turns them off. They feel that their levels of skin hunger are actually full and they don't want to be touched. And particularly around menopause, this can happen if a woman is experiencing lots of hot flushes or is feeling uncomfortable about her body. So that's another reason that sex may or may not occur. As I said, the relationship is the most important thing. And it's okay to have sex for the goodwill of the relationship. We don't have to have that incredible level of desire to think, oh, okay, now it's all right for me to have sex. there are other reasons for us to focus on, and we need to focus on those rather than just the libido.
Liz, what about hormone therapy for treating libido?
That's a tricky question. Estrogen therapy can improve sexual function, and mainly because once a woman has estrogen therapy, her sense of well-being, her symptoms, her flushes, all those sorts of menopausal symptoms may be improved, but also it will improve, estrogen may improve vaginal dryness. And estrogen may be given vaginally by a cream or a tablet to act locally and so therefore improve the secretions. Testosterone may be suitable for some women. There's no real decrease in testosterone levels in women around the age of menopause, but there is a number of women who do have a lowering or loss of testosterone or have low testosterone levels, and that may have an impact on their libido. But it doesn't always correlate. So there are some women with normal libido and low testosterone, and some women with low libido and normal testosterone. But in some women where they do have a low level and low libido, testosterone therapy may be available. Some of you may also have heard of DHEA, which is one of the precursors for testosterone. But in fact, at this point in time, there is no scientific research which really is available to recommend the use of DHEA.
We're going to take another break. In the last part, we covered pharmaceutical therapies, natural therapy options, managing sleep disturbance and libido. We do hope you're sending your questions in. Welcome back. We've just been talking about libido. Mandy, what other effects can menopause have on emotional health?
Well, I guess just as I mentioned all those factors for libido, they also influence our emotional well-being. So who we are, the kind of experiences that we've had, the way that we actually think and feel and behave. And I'll talk a little bit more about thinking styles, also our lifestyles, self-esteem, and certainly the relationships that we have with our families, our support networks are very important on our emotional well-being. And I think we've heard so much today about all the different aspects of our lives and all the different things that we can do. I'd actually like people to stop right now and think about some of the influences that have happened in their lives. We all hear these messages all the time, and a lot of us know what to do, but what I'd like people to do is actually stop, think about what their goals are, think about what their needs are, and also their expectations and their values. So hopefully tonight you'll come away with thinking, I have one goal. We don't want you to go and change absolutely everything. We would just like you to think of one tiny thing you might like to do. So as you're listening to the rest of tonight, think about what that one goal might be. And it might be to do with your mood. A lot of women will say at menopause that they're depressed or they're anxious and it's because of menopause, but in actual fact we know that there are a lot of other influences on our mood at that time. So there are things like our previous experiences of depression. If a woman has experienced depression or anxiety before, then she's more likely to experience it at menopause. If she is in a high stress situation, if she's coping with traumatic events. We also know that marital problems or relationship problems, family issues can impact on mood more than menopause. The most important thing is attitude and having a positive attitude. And I know that it's very simple for me to say, just have a simple attitude and turn around and make everything positive. It's a lot more complex than that. But emotional well-being is quite a complex area.
Do hormones influence depression?
The jury is actually still out on that one. It's a very complex relationship. I think that hormones do influence depression in a small way. We know that when women are suffering from PMS or postnatally or menopause, they are more likely to experience mood swings. They might feel more anxious, more sad. But whether menopause actually causes depression, as I said before, it's all the other factors that influence it. So when we're looking at the hormones, we think they may account for a small influence on depression, but they're not the only thing, and they're certainly not going to be the reason. A lot of women will say that they've experienced terrible hot flushes, they've been up all night, so they're fatigued, they feel that horrible anxious feeling when they have a hot flush. And so it's that sort of roll-on or domino effect that is actually influencing their mood as well. We know that stress is a big impactor on mood, and so again we have hormones that increase when we're stressed. So if we're looking at the hormone connection, we can include stress with it. It's important to recognise what is causing you to be stressed. We have so many things going on in our lives and we don't take the time to stop and actually think about what is the most stressful and the least stressful. So I often ask people to rate their stressful situations from 1 to 10, so you can kind of get a gauge of what's having the biggest impact, and then break things up into manageable bits so that it becomes easy to attack a problem. The other thing I think that's really helpful is to take control of areas of your life that you know you can. So it might sound silly, but you could open your cupboard and pull everything out and tidy it up, and you've actually taken some control over something. So when you open the cupboard, you think, wow, that looks really good. I've done something and I actually don't feel as stressed when I open the cupboard. So it sounds really tiny, but it can be a really helpful, I guess, illustration of looking at how we break things up to find areas that we can control.
What about how a woman sees herself and her body?
Self-esteem is actually one of the most significant impactors on our mood. So self-esteem is how we value ourselves and respect ourselves. So it comes from our relationships, our roles, the kinds of experiences that we have. And if someone has low self-esteem, then they tend to be more prone to depression, anxiety, more vulnerable to health problems. If someone has high self-esteem, they'll focus on what they're really good at. So they can say, look, I'm really good at this, I'm really good at that, I'm not so good at that, but it doesn't matter. If someone has low self-esteem, they tend to focus on all the things they don't do very well, on their failures, if you like. And one of the favourite quotes that we often refer to is that Eleanor Roosevelt said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And it's very, very true. We need to own our successes and our achievements. So we also need to value ourselves. I think as women we tend to devalue ourselves and apologise for who we are and what we say. So catch yourself when you say, oh, I'm really sorry to interrupt, or I'm apologising because I'm being a nuisance. I think it's very easy to turn self-esteem around. So you might sort of list all the strengths that you have, identify what you're really good at, be kinder to yourself. As a woman, we tend to put everybody else first, so be kinder to ourselves, make a list of our strengths, and it just takes time to do something that's really nice, something nurturing.
How do relationships affect your mood?
Relationships are actually quite important to our mood. As I spoke about in the sexual function aspect of libido, relationships sort of are a bit of a temperature gauge for how our mood can be as well. And I think there are some really good do's in our relationships. It's important to know what you want and to respect yourself first before you can really understand what you want in your relationship. Then perhaps sit down and do that activity of what are my goals for my relationship. You could ask your partner to do the same thing. Know what your partner wants. Don't mind read. We do tend to mind read quite a lot and think we know what the other person is thinking. Communication then comes next. We really need to know that no topic is forbidden, that we can talk about everything. And if somebody says, you know, you drive me crazy when you talk about that, or don't bring up that topic again, then you need to find a way of sitting down and working through that issue and making it okay to talk about. Expect respect and kindness, and I think the longer our relationships go on, we forget. Just simple things like greeting each other with a kiss and saying goodbye properly. They tend to get lost after we've been together for a while. Use I statements, so I wonder if I could sit down and talk to you about something, rather than you really need to come and sit and talk with me. They're very different tones, and you'll get a lot further if you use the I statement. And just taking that time out, putting fun and passion back into your lives, that date night idea, or just an hour together somewhere, that can be really helpful. And if there are problems, seek counselling. I think that's very important. One of the other aspects that's also very important are friends and social support. And we know that women who have friends and networks are actually less vulnerable to depression and cardiovascular disease. So it's important to have those networks in your life. And as we age, we tend to have quality friendships. So it's about the quality of the friendship, not how many friends you have. It could be about belonging to a club or a community. Joining something that you might not have thought of joining before, or there's a great website, and it'll be on the Jean Hale's website. The volunteer websites can be a good idea if you feel like you need some support or network and your friends are doing other things in their life.
To finish off, Mandy, what practical tips have you got for women?
There are lots of strategies. Isn't that good news? There are lots and lots of things that we can do. I said at the beginning, you know, to think about a goal. Maybe you've thought about what needs to change. So that's probably the first step. Ask yourself, does something need to change? What has stopped me from making changes in the past? What are my fears? Look at the long-term goals as well as your short-term goals, and just choose one of those short-term goals so that it's achievable. Make sure it's something that you actually feel you can achieve. I think it's a great time to destigmatise. You are not weird or crazy for thinking a certain way, or if you're feeling anxious about something, it's probably quite normal, and if you can talk to somebody about that, that's really helpful. Change negative lifestyle behaviours, learn more about yourself. I mean, coming here and listening to this, you're already achieving one goal of learning more. Imagine that you're your own best friend. We tend to treat our best friends very, very well. We need to take our own advice sometimes. Another thing is letting it out. Often we tend to hang on to our emotions, we swallow them. It's much better to externalise them, to get them out somehow, whether it's talking, writing, drawing, exercising, and then doing something really special for yourself, something nurturing like a body bath or a manicure or something like that. Keeping a diary is very helpful, particularly when we're talking about physical symptoms of menopause. It can help to sort of put the physical symptoms in one category and perhaps emotional symptoms in another. So keeping a diary, how do you normally cope in a crisis? Think about what's worked for you in the past. Challenge those unhelpful ways of thinking. So if you're always saying, I should have said that, I talk about the stop signs technique. So at the end of the street, you've got a stop sign. Picture the stop sign, stop. I just had that really negative thought. Now, what can I do that's different? Connecting with others is really important. So joining that social group. And most importantly, facing that fear, doing something. And if you say to yourself more than twice, I think something's really wrong, then again, try and do something about it. Go on websites like the Jean Hales Foundation website. You can contact your GP, the Australian Psychological Society. There are lots of really good resources out there. Community health centres are very good as well.
While the panel are looking at your questions, let's go back and look at some of the key points from the program. Firstly, menopause is a natural part of life, and happily, not all women will experience symptoms, but there are some who do, and they may last for several years. The most important thing, though, is it's no one size fits all. It's an individual experience. There are alternatives to hormone therapy for symptom relief. And importantly, talk to your health practitioner about your individual needs, including the risks and benefits of any therapy. If considering hormone therapy, take the lowest effective dose for the shortest period of time to alleviate symptoms. We'd love to hear from you about the program, and we very much hope that you will fill in the evaluation forms, and one lucky person will receive a signed copy of Mandy Dix's book, Life Begins at Menopause. Thank you for sending in your questions. Some of them will be answered here now by our panel, and the rest of the answers from the panel will be posted on our website. That's www.jeanhales.org.au. Our first question is, do I need to get my hormone levels checked?
Thank you. That's a very good question, and it's a question that we're very commonly asked. The answer is no. Most women before the periods have stopped want to know what their hormone levels are, but in fact they're going to probably be normal, or they're going to be swinging from low levels to high levels. It doesn't actually help us in treatment. The one group in which it is sometimes helpful to do hormones is those women who might be going through an early menopause before the age of 40, and in those women who may be already on estrogen therapy, and we need to try and determine whether they're absorbing their estrogen adequately.
I'm only 37. Could my symptoms be menopause?
Early menopause can be a very devastating diagnosis. So any woman who has some menstrual irregularity in their 30s and early 40s, it is one of the differential diagnoses. In other words, it's one of the possible diagnoses for menstrual irregularity. So yes, it is possible, and it's important to see your doctor about getting tested. The time in which the hormone levels should be done in someone who could be going through early menopause is to have a blood test to check for the estradiol and the FSH levels on the third day of the menstrual cycle, the third day of the period.
A lot of people want to know, is hormone therapy safe?
It's a difficult question to answer in the sense that what is safe in life, really. Hormone therapy has its risks and benefits like any medication that we prescribe. There are positive benefits of being on hormone therapy for the treatment of menopausal symptoms, as I've already outlined, and to protect bones and to reduce the risk of bowel cancer. And it has its risks, as I have outlined. When a doctor is prescribing hormone replacement therapy, we discuss with the woman the pros and cons, and then the woman has to decide in balance what risks she's prepared to take and what benefit she could receive from that. So it depends on her general health, it depends on her family history, it depends on many factors as to how you balance up the risks and the benefits.
Mandy, a question for you. I understand what your psychologist said about libido, but how do I get my husband to understand?
Good question. It's often hard to get partners to open up, I guess, to be able to get them to come along to an information session. It's obviously a fairly personal issue. We have some fabulous information on the website. It could be that you just suggest, I've found this really interesting information and I'd love you to come and have a look at some of the things that are written on it. You could print out, there's some fact sheets on the website, and there's certainly one for libido. You could print that out. There's also going to the GP together. Perhaps if a woman goes for her checkup, she might suggest that her partner comes along and they can then talk about some of the issues that might be influencing both of them, so that can be also very handy. And there is some very good literature which we also have listed on the website that perhaps people can order and read.
My mother and sister have both had breast cancer. I've got severe hot flushes. What is safe for me to take, Liz?
This is a clinical situation in which the main risk of breast cancer is in fact the family history. So it depends on the severity of the symptoms. So we may in fact suggest that you go and see Sandra, or someone like Sandra, to see whether natural therapies may be of benefit to her. Sometimes some of the across-the-counter products may be of benefit, and Sandra's going to answer a question about this shortly. If the symptoms are unresolved by other therapies, it may be appropriate then to use some of the hormone therapies. The one that perhaps is most suitable is the medication Tibolone that I mentioned before. But you should discuss this with your doctor and seek appropriate advice.
Are products available in the supermarket or health food stores safe and effective?
Okay, there's a few points to make there. First of all, there's a very big variety in the quality of herbal medicine that's available in Australia. Australia does have some very good quality manufacturing, but it does really vary. So what you might be buying over the counter may vary in terms of the quality you may be getting from a naturopath. The other point is the idea that things are safe if they're natural. And there's this idea that just because they're natural, that, you know, Mary up the road can tell you how to use them, or that anyone's an expert and that they're safe. So there's the issue with safety as well. And for certain groups of women, like women who have breast cancer, they have to be very careful about what they use, and particularly not using supplements such as soy-based products. And otherwise, they may be effective for some women, but they're often designed so that they've got every single herb that has any type of estrogenic activity all in the one, sometimes in subtherapeutic doses, so you're not always getting them in doses that are going to give a benefit. And it's kind of covering a one-size-fits-all, and it's not always doesn't always work. Sometimes it does. And I'll often see the women who, for them, it hasn't worked.
My mother is 69 and stopped taking her hormones because of the risks outlined in the media, but her severe symptoms returned. She is now back on them for her quality of life. She couldn't function without them. What are her risks in taking them long term? Is it safe?
Janet, it's a question we also are often asked, and it depends on the length of time that your symptoms are there for. And as I've said, the majority of symptoms will last between 2 to 5 years, remembering that 10% of women will have symptoms that go on for more than 10 years. So usually what we suggest is that you take the hormone therapy for somewhere between the 2 to 5 years, and then perhaps halve the dose and see whether or not you're still having any menopausal symptoms. If you're not, you may be able to stop your therapy and see how whether or not the symptoms have returned. A number of people believe that if you're on hormone therapy, it must delay the process of menopause, and that's just not correct. In fact, if you're going to have symptoms for 5 years and you stay on hormone therapy for 3 years, then you'll have symptoms when you stop. But if you stay on hormone therapy for 6 years and you go off them, your symptoms should have ceased. The problem is that we don't know how long each of us are going to have symptoms for.
If I want to use natural therapies, where can I find a good naturopath?
Yes, that is a good question. Generally, it's a good idea to look at the associations, and we'll have the associations listed on our website. So, for example, the Australian Natural Therapies Association and the National Herbalist Association, and they will have a list of practitioners that are in the area of where the person is asking.
Should I have my bone density measured? And is the test at the chemist good?
A bone density test, the one that we would recommend, is called a DEXA, and that is a test that is an X-ray technique with very low irradiation, and they scan your lumbar spine, so the lower part of the spine, and also one of your hips. And that is the most accurate way of assessing bone density. And that measurement will tell you what your bone density is in relation to two standards. One, what is best bones, that is somebody in their 20s, that's when bones are strongest. And secondly, in relation to your own age group. And there are special criteria that tell us whether or not the bone density is within a normal range, whether there is some bone loss called osteopenia, or whether it is into the osteoporotic range. The bone densities, the heel bone density that are done through chemist shops, measure the bone density in the heel, and the technology is not quite sophisticated enough to be able to say that it's similar to the bone density in either your spine and your hip, which is more accurate assessment of what your overall bone density is and your risk of osteoporosis.
This question we're going to ask all of our panellists to comment on, and that is, what can I do to make sex less painful? We'll start with Liz.
It's a symptom that is expressed to me by many, many women, and often as women go through the postmenopausal years. There are a number of reasons. The first one that we've talked about already tonight, and that is vaginal dryness. And so the use of vaginal estrogens, or using a lubricant, making sure that you use a lubricant, and there are lots of lubricants that are available across the counter, and they're of different types. There are some natural products, and some of them have different quality in the type of gel or liquid they are. But vaginal estrogen will improve the blood supply to the vagina, and that will then increase the vaginal secretions and make a woman's vagina much more comfortable. The other thing that can happen is not just vaginal dryness, but what happens to the vaginal and the genital skin is that the skin loses its elasticity. And so sometimes the vaginal entrance can narrow, and that can cause a great deal of distress and discomfort, and very often women go to their doctors and the doctor says, but everything looks normal. But they don't realise that the stretching of the vaginal entrance is not as it was before, and that is often compounded because as men get older, they sometimes also develop erectile problems, and so the combination of a slightly narrowed vagina and some erectile dysfunction. And so it's also important there to use a lubricant and to use the estrogen. And if that doesn't work, you have to see your GP.
Sandra.
Yes, I spoke about the linseed. So having the linseeds 2 dessert spoons a day on a daily basis can be quite useful. And a good way of doing that is, putting them onto your muesli. They're quite nice in smoothies, or, I have some women that just sprinkle it onto their Vegemite toast, however they want to get it in. Yes. But what I do, women will often report that as long as they're using the linseeds, it's useful. Now, if it's really severe vaginal dryness, I am often having women using a combination of the estrogen creams, and there's no harm in taking the linseeds at the same time. We do have a cream that we make up that some naturopaths would prescribe, and that would be the best recommendations.
There's also a phytoestrogen.
Yes, there is. There's a phytoestrogen particular preparation available over the counter. It's a vaginal soy-based preparation, and some women find that quite useful because it comes with an applicator, so for ease of application it's quite useful, and they have some data to suggest that it's quite useful, and it's a twice-a-week preparation that's available from pharmacies.
And I think that what happens when sex is painful for a lot of women, it sets up a negative or an anxiety type reaction to sex, so that they tend to tighten everything up and fear that this is really going to hurt, and that fear then makes the whole process more uncomfortable. So if that's happening, the first step is definitely to treat the physiological, so the vaginal area, and then perhaps do some relaxation exercises, take time with sort of foreplay and intercourse, and if there is anxiety, perhaps do some relaxation exercises, both partners, so that you are actually taking more time in the act.
It's a very interesting question from a man in our audience. My wife is hormonal, moody and depressed. I think she's going through menopause, but she doesn't think anything is wrong and won't see her doctor. What can I do?
This is actually really quite hard for a lot of men, but also for families who feel that perhaps their mothers or sisters or partners are going through menopause and they're not really sure how to approach it. I actually see some men that come to me and will talk about the best way of talking to their partner. It's really about giving everybody the information. So first stop I would suggest is go to the GP. The man could go to the GP and talk about, particularly if there's a relationship, a family relationship, everybody will know each other. The GP can talk about the different issues, maybe sort out what is depression, what is menopause, and give suggestions on how to approach the subject. There's a lot of information on our website about menopause. We can
send lots of different family members to that website to have a look at that as well. So it's probably the first step, and then encouraging the couples perhaps to go to the GP together after everything's been discussed.
And from a person who lives in a remote community, this person lives 3 hours from the closest GP who doesn't seem to know a lot about menopause. Where can she get advice?
I think this is a big issue for women in rural, remote areas. I think that the important thing for women, this particular woman, I would say, is to seek some advice from the community health nurse. They would be the first port of call, and there are many very well-trained community health nurses out there who have an interest in menopause and would be keen to offer some advice. It may be that you could source information from websites, including our own, and also to perhaps see whether the nearest regional town has someone who may be appropriate. The other option is, once again, looking on the Australasian Menopause Society website, which is the www.menopause.org.au. There is a list of medical practitioners around Australia who are members of the society and therefore have some interest in this particular area. But once again, I agree, it's a very difficult problem for many, many women.
Do keep on sending your questions in. If we can't get to all of these questions tonight, answers will continue to be posted tomorrow. Also, you'll be able to submit your questions through the online console tomorrow. So if you think of something you want to know, send it in. The complete webcast will be available for viewing again here for the next 24 hours. In addition, an archive version of the webcast will then be available for viewing through the Jean Hales website from Monday, March 10, along with all the questions and answers. In the meantime, there is a vast range of excellent women's health resources to be found on our website. Thank you for being part of our first community webcast. And thank you to our panel who have provided us with wonderful advice and variety of options to consider. I know how much I've benefited over the years from your expertise. But above all, it's about what works for you. Most of all, be kind to yourself. And while we may find it hard to define kindness, I think we all know what it is when we are in its presence. Thank you.